No, I think that's a great perspective, man. I mean, I share that perspective, and I think maybe hopefully that's part of what's going on now. We're gonna have to reevaluate the way we look at all those things when you deal with loss, when you deal with change.
That's right. You
You
know,
have to you have to
so have you experienced any adjustments or losses? How what have you done?
during coronavirus.
And then
Um,
just since the last time I saw you,
oh man,
because you've been doing this full bore out now. You're fully in. You're committed to the real
I'm
estate thing.
yeah, definitely committed to it. Man, since we last spoke, I'm trying to remember. Well, when we last spoke, yeah, because I was getting my broker's license,
Right.
so that was probably 3 or 4 years ago, actually.
Yep.
Um, I essentially, when we first met years ago, I was doing commercial real estate with
Right.
Matt Daniels and those guys. The politics and all that stuff was too much for me, and I was like, okay, if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this on my, like, I have to, but I don't want to depend on a team. I don't want to depend on this, that, the other. I don't want to negotiate back and forth forever and ever. If I'm gonna be a broker and make my own money and make my own career, I just have to jump in at some point. And that's when I got my license up here in Mass. I started doing rentals,
Right.
and I did that probably about 2 years strong. Um, and then I was just like burnt out. It was going pretty well, but I was burnt out, and I was like, all right, I can't keep working at this pace. So, for these smaller fees, so I need to get into more sales.
Yep.
So I had always I was working for a small company called Encore, and I always had the idea of doing my own thing, but I think it was just lack of confidence or just didn't quite believe I wanted more experience. I wanted this, I wanted that. So I joined Keller Williams and started doing more sales. But while I was there, I started branding my own thing and and I just didn't see the value that they were really adding. And they had a lot of it wasn't huge like JLL or anything, but just a lot of regulation, a lot of red tape, a lot of stuff that kind of slowed me down. And they charged you for everything.
Yeah.
And I was like, I could, maybe how you feel sometimes. I'm like, I can do this myself. Like I can do, like, why am I paying like this, all these little fees for stuff that your website isn't even good. This is not even, you know what I mean?
Right.
So anyway, long story short, I started my own brokerage, and it was just me, and I hired a couple people, and that's why I got my broker's license.
Yep.
And I just started just hustling, man. And it was hard. Like the hardest part was doing everything, not just working with clients.
That's right.
Yeah, that was the hardest part. And then
Because
especially,
you're doing, I need a website. Okay, now I need this. Well, what about this? How do I capture this list? And what about contacts? What about telecommunications? What about, and at the end of the day, it's dizzying. Like what I started to do when I started getting into business is like, okay, man, how do I got to be a bookkeeper. I've been paying my bills. I
right,
learned it the orthodox way. And then all of a sudden I'm like, man, I'm just automating we're going to auto pay everything. My job now is going to be offense, not defense. I'm just going to start
right.
making money and bringing it in and let that just go out and then balance the books later.
Yeah, no, that was honest. That was, and maybe it's just when I look back at it now, it's probably just part of the journey because I wasn't a business person. I came from sports and I came from coaching. Like, so, my business career started, 25, 26, 26, 7 years old. You know what I mean? It was all literally sports before that. So I had gone to school and I like studied business, taken business classes and stuff, but to actually manage, okay, the accounting, the finance, the marketing, the web, and then all the minutia of it. And then to your point, I clearly had to figure out like, I can't do everything. And I think there's a time you were saying about, your 10,000 hours. I think everybody has their own process where you have to internalize it for you. You have to learn what you can and can't do how you want to do it, what's important for you when you do it, and all those things. So I've always been ambitious and like, all right, in my mind, I'm like, I think I can do that, which I think is a good thing. But man, you have to go through the hurdles and bumps of that too. So like, I always felt really good about client interactions and my real estate knowledge and just advising people and things like that.
Yep.
So I had to, but as you would expect, just spending a lot of time doing everything else, and then hiring people, which is a whole another thing,
That's right.
and managing them,
Right.
and just trying to figure it out, like just trying to figure the whole thing out. But overall, it was pretty good. I was going pretty good, and a year, I started kind of focusing more on myself, less on hiring agents and things like that, just because it was so time consuming. And you have a brokerage or like, yeah. Um, but I was just still kind of building my own business and just building and building. And it's only like 2 or 3 years, this little time period.
Yep.
But I did have one, I still have one really good agent, which was just a blessing. Like when you get one, and we just vibe and she's awesome and all that type of stuff. So I was just building. And then like this year I was expecting like, okay, this is going to be like a good year, and it was a little slow, like January, February, and then Corona hit. And then I was like, this sucks. Like this is, because in my mind, I was like, okay, the market is going to slow down for another 2-3 years or whatever it is. And just another thing that you have to deal with being an entrepreneur,
Right.
But at the same time, it wasn't like, it was okay. You know what I mean? It wasn't my ideal, but it was okay. And, then things just started getting busier and busier.
Right.
And then what happened was like, I was at home, like, watching the news and doing the thing, and just same thing. I think in some ways, I think similarly, I think to you in terms, I'm always trying to figure out like growth, I guess, or like how to get to the next thing. But for me, it's not like making money. It's more like you're saying, freedom, like fulfillment. Like I want to enjoy my days, my lifestyle. Like I want to enjoy life. You know what I mean?
And sometimes when we're doing all of these tasks, we really are hard on ourselves because
Right.
we're not feeling the sensation of what we perceive to be joy and freedom in running your own companies. Anytimes people connect it to these negative emotions, like, oh my God, this was a horrible thing. I can't believe I got to do this. I can't believe I got to do that. And it's like, what I started to just accept is that feeling is freedom.
Right.
And
Right.
it doesn't have to. And if we connect it to something different, then that's what that is. It's just like when I tell my kids, hey, if I say, oh my God, you just fell down, you must be in pain. And then I show that fear, they connect that with fear and sorrow. So it's like,
Right.
I think as grownups, we forget what we try to instill in children, and we
Right.
forget. We're like, oh my God, this is. Then now what I find myself doing quite often, and it's not always. I'm not this happy-go-lucky son. But I'll go upstairs, and my wife will be like, "How's your day?" I'm like, "It was awesome. I had so many problems. It was great. I need more problems." And she's like, "Have you been
Right.
sniffing glue downstairs for like the last 3 hours?"
No. It's like, it's funny you say that, man, because like growing up in the sports culture and all that, it's super big, obviously, on motivation. And I think about those things, like what was making me, I played football and I run into these grown men like this, like, and you think about like all of those things. And then for a long time though, I was like, man, I don't want to be into like foo-foo stuff, like getting hype and motivated. I just want to execute and do things.
Right.
But now I'm coming much more back to, and maybe it's not getting all excited, but to perspective, like your thought process, your positivity, like all the same things you're talking about, like all these things happen, good, well, quote, good, bad, they just happen. Now, what's my perspective on it? Because it's huge. Because when I think about my career, my life and stuff, it's like, yeah, you're like, oh, I'm stressed out, or this problem. But we, for the most part, we chose 90 to 95% of all of it. And all of it does, in that sports analogy, it makes you stronger. It builds you up. It is producing something in you. What freedom, making you a stronger person, whatever. It's, are you going to enjoy it while it's happening?
That's right.
So, that's kind of how I was thinking about things. But I mean, long story short, man, I'm still trying to figure out the whole small business person, the whole thing. Like, how do I scale? What do I need to do? There's all these ideas, and you can choose all these things. Should I hire more people and do it that way? Should I just take myself completely out of it? Do I need to, because I think I'm good at the actual transactional piece of it. So should I just do more of that? Long story short, man, like, so I think early this spring or something, some guy reached out to me on LinkedIn from this company called Tori. I get a bunch of messages, so I usually just ignore them all. But this one seemed legit.
I'm glad you didn't ignore mine. I'm glad you saw mine.
No. Like, I read through the stuff, but I don't know how your LinkedIn is. I get so much, so I filter out for the good ones. But yeah, he reached out and he was like, "Hey, like, we got this brokerage or whatever. Like, would you be interested in talking?" And most of the time I don't. But I was working out of WeWork, and I had seen like their thing. I was like, all right, let me hear what it's about,
Yeah.
So we talked, and he was telling me what it's about. And he's like, we're looking for someone. And I was like, and he was telling me about their business model and their strategy and what they're trying to do. And we were just talking kind of like me and you are talking, kind of like as business people, entrepreneurs. And I was like, well, have you thought about this? Like, how do you think this? Because, they raise money, and they're like trying to really have scale and all these type of things. We just talked about it. He's like, look, we're looking for another agent in Boston. And I was like, no, like, I mean, thank you, but like, I'm good. Like, I'm just building. I'm like, I'm just building my thing, And
Yep.
he was like, he said, what? He said, well, what could we do to make you consider it? And I was like, because I was trying to be thoughtful about what he was saying. And I was like, that's a good question. I don't,
what pain can you take away from me? That's what you're thinking.
Because you know how when you say no to something, you might not think it through, really.
That's right.
You're just like, oh, no. But I was like, okay, let me objectively think about what it would look like, or what could be different. What could you offer? What could I, whatever. And so I took a day or two and I started thinking about it. And I was just like, okay, I want to do my own thing. Like, maybe it's ego, maybe it's self, maybe it's just what I like. But they're ahead of me in essentially what I want to do.
Right.
Because they do a really good job marketing and a bunch of stuff. And I was like, I just started thinking about it more. And then the more that I thought about it, I was like, I think this could be okay. Because basically, like, they do a good job marketing, get a bunch of leads and bunch of clients. And their whole deal is they want to deliver them, not leads, but technically it's supposed to be clients, like already qualified,
right,
already ready to go. They deliver them to an experienced agent and try to make your job as easy as possible by having all the support and back end stuff. You do the client interaction. Essentially, it's supposed to be like you get them to purchase and sell, and you have this team helping you do everything else.
So
So that
you found that the things that you identified as your superpowers, you now took the other things away. And when you scale those back and trim them away, you're able to prosper much better than having to deal with those other elements, which are more painful because the logistics and coordination and lead generation and all those other elements that become challenging in business. Because any business we're in, we're doing the same thing. So many people forget many times that whether it's a real estate transaction or you're selling makeup, there's still lead generation.
right,
There's still marketing. There's still all of these elements. There's still accounting. There's still bookkeeping. There's still all of these different things. There's manufacturing. There's distribution. There's all of this stuff. And in our world, it's there's lead generation, and there's working with the client, and there's finding the product, and then there's making an offer, and so there's all of these different things that are happening, and it's all the same. It's all parallel the same way. Right? So we all forget that there's a process for everything, from like to go to Starbucks to buy a coffee. It's an entire process, and there's this whole supply chain behind it. Right. And if we could just go and say, here's the coffee, this is why you should be buying this, and just go into the persuasion of it and helping people get to the conclusion that they want, and hand off the rest of it to guys like Starbucks and the logistics and Amazon and everything else. That's it. But that's the process. So sometimes as entrepreneurs, we have these epiphanies where it's like this, there's this journey to achievement. And then we start hitting a deal, but then there's this other journey to transformation. And you're beginning to see what I'm seeing in you and seeing in me, and saying there's this transformation and this understanding of what it really is in our mind to be an entrepreneur. And it's going to be different for everybody. Everybody looks at it quite differently. But that's the best part about this, is that we need to look at it differently. If we look at it like everybody else looks at it, or try to be like somebody else, we'll never be somebody else, I can never be like Matt Daniels. He's a common friend of ours, right? Students that are going to be listening to some of these interview bits. But we can never be that, because we're not that person. That person picks and chooses who that person has desired to emulate, right? So no, I think that's really cool, because that's the epiphany that I just had when you're talking. Is like, man, you started to realize, scaling back, what you, Jason Carter, were really all about, what your powerful, your superpower that you bring to the table is. And that these other things were sort of like kryptonite, so to speak, kind of holding bits of it back. You love doing it because you wanted to be independent, but your real independence can come forward a lot easier by finding somebody that you can leverage to be able to do it. So a good entrepreneur learns how to leverage,
Right. That's exactly what it was. And that's exactly what it's been. And, it's a journey. It's a process, like maybe one day I will pick up more of that, and who knows, but I think for right now, it's kind of like what you were saying with the teaching. Now I'm deep into being a real estate agent, and I always have these ambitions, and I'm saying, okay, maybe that investment is good, or maybe I can build this team, or we can do this, or I should do. It's always going through my mind, but the majority of the actual hours of my day now are spent working with clients on transactions, which I think, I know it's a lot of work but it's a good thing, because kind of to your experience in teaching, it can't be taken away from me. And there's not many people I know that are doing as the volume of transactions and things like that I'm doing. So I just have to continue to pick up this little nugget and note and relationship here, and this note here, and this learn, and then at the right time, it'll change into something else.
That's right. And you just have to know, it'll just become evident when it comes. It's just you're on the path. And so, like right now, as we're talking, you're an entrepreneur. Right now, this is what it feels like. The sensations that we feel are the real sensations, and it's how we choose to label those. It's how we choose to accept them. Like everybody gauges entrepreneur success through financial success. And the truth is, in the initial stages, that's what it's all about. It's about, 98% of our problems can be completely quelled with financial resources, right? And that's the truth for everybody. Everybody listening and talking, we can, there's so many problems that we can pacify with money. And we can't lose track of, sight of the fact that it has to be much more. We have to keep pushing. And those sensations that we're experiencing right now are the good ones. Because eventually when you get to the top of the mountain, when you get to where you want to be, then the classic question comes up, like, how'd you do it? Oh man, for like all these years, I sucked wind just like everybody else. This was painful. I just chose not to give up. I just chose to continue pressing on. And that could make you go into something else. It could make you do this or this or this. It's the acceptance of never say never,
Right.
But I think for me, my targeting system is now, will this bring me some kind of freedom? Because I'm sure for people that are going to listen to segments that we're doing right now,
Right.
I'm sure you would concur. Is this an easy business?
No. If you think it's going to be,
if they think it's going to be, sheet cake smothered in victory.
No. Do you think, are a lot of students and stuff going to be listening to this?
So what we're going to do is I want to share this, because I think that parts of what we're talking about is the organic spirit of what's the truth. And I think that's a big part of what I want to be able to do. I'm doing a summit, and the summit is bringing together a bunch of really great speakers and people that I can talk with and have sort of a relationship with, and to kind of look at the journey through their eyes. Because there's a lot of people that are considering doing stuff. And it's not that I'm trying to make people, discourage people from doing it.
Right.
I don't think people fully understand the magnitude of the commitment that this takes.
Right.
And to each their own. Everybody can jump into the pool if they want to. Sometimes there's a lifeguard on duty and sometimes there's not, right? Sometimes there's a strong undertow and then sometimes there's not. So the reality is that I would much rather see people understand that there is this reality of what we do. And there is this isolation, and there's isolation in your head, and there's isolation in your heart. And you have to be able to present yourself constantly. And when a client calls you or a customer calls you or your family calls you, you have to have this understanding that everything we do is very, very difficult. But then after a while, that difficulty becomes easy because we're doing and challenging ourselves with difficulties every day.
100%.
Yeah, it's like Norman Vincent Peale said, the only people that don't have problems are the ones in graveyards. So, maybe maybe we need more problems, right? That was his philosophy. Maybe we need more problems as we live, because it's just like conditioning muscle. We condition muscle by putting extreme amounts of resistance against our body, and then all of a sudden muscles grow. But if we put extreme pressure on us as a people,
right,
maybe our problem-solving muscles grow, and we're able to overcome things that other people seem are insurmountable. And then for us, it's like building a website, no problem. Getting leads, no problem. Closing a deal, no problem. Structuring an offer, no problem. It's insurmountable to young people getting into the business. I don't mean young youth by age. It could be someone doing a transition. It could be someone else. I always tell people, you have to build a model of business around your blueprint of who you are.
Right.
And if you're not happy with who you are, then that's another conversation. There are things that can be done psychologically to help manipulate and change you if you're willing to accept that change.
Right.
However, who you are, your blueprint, and your model of the world needs to be a big piece of a business plan. It's like you said earlier, you knew that there were certain things that you would do them, but you weren't too excited doing them.
Right.
And that's my thing too. I mean, I really looked at things like, I tend to gravitate towards, introverted tasks. And I do very good at introverted tasks. If I have to design, email sequences or marketing pieces, or if I have to design websites, I can go to the lab for hours. I can sit there by myself in my own head for hours and hours and hours and hours, and time just trickles off. I don't have any concept of time.
Right.
beyond that. The only thing that snaps me back to reality is my baby is in the monitor moving or talking, or I need to fix something or do something. Then I'm back to reality, right? But I
Right.
could, and you know what that's like, and we all know what that's
Yeah,
like,
you
right?
get into it. Yeah.
We just get into it. And I've started to realize, well, what are the things that I get into? And could those things that I get into make me see, or reap rewards, gains? What can I do? So there's some emotional gains that you get, right? And then we all need financial gains and stuff like that. But that's how I've been looking at it. I'm like, man, I love those things. Now the extrovert things, I don't like find good. So a lot of people ask me, hey, you have brokerage companies. Do you do showings? Do you do this and that? And I'm like, no, I don't do any of that stuff. You know,
Right.
I use those licenses to just leverage referrals. That's my superpower. I can meet
Right.
people.
You're meeting so many people. Yeah.
Right. I meet thousands of people a year that if I can just help them get to the right people, that's it. So I just give referrals out. I give them out, with just heart, nothing but here's a referral. And I find that it's part of it, but there's always a business model that I'm developing and cultivating. I think I hate to admit it, but sometimes I just realize it's just going to take a while.
Right. That's the thing. Things take time. I think that's what you were talking about. I know maybe younger people are going to be, or people who are interested in getting in the business and stuff, but that's the thing. Like, one of the reasons I wanted to be an entrepreneur is for that self-development and that growth that you're talking about. I wanted to put myself under pressure.
Right.
One thing that I definitely underestimated was how long that state of constant pressure would continue.
That's right.
Like, I thought, and I guess a lot of people think like this, like, okay, I'll put in my time, I'll put in my years, and then I guess it'll get easier. You'll reach a certain thing. But from my experience, all that happens is you get more responsibility, more pressure.
That's right.
More busy, more everything. So
Your
you have
deadlifts just get heavier, and they get heavier, and they get heavier, and it's the pressure increases, but your body is now more resistant to the previous pressure. That's the only difference, is that the pressure doesn't stop. It'll continue, but it's how we get used to it. It's how we accept it, and how accepting of that sensation we are, and how we let it pass. Some people don't let it pass, and it affects their body. That's, they're not at ease anymore. That's what the opposite is, dis-ease. We start to get physically manipulated by it. Inflammation and this and that. We start to really take it and keep it emotionally. And it's hard not to do that. But the ultimate reality is we have to. Otherwise, it reduces the amount of time that we have to realize a reward or gain at the end of it,
Right.
But it's a pursuit. It isn't just we're in the real estate business. So I want people to really understand that this isn't just this is a life choice, and it's a choice. But you have to have a true north. You have to have a direction, a purpose. It could be a person that's your purpose. It could be your kids. It could be your family. You want to take care of your mother. It could be any of these are good purposes. They're your true north. But along the way, you are put in this blindfolded position, and you're spun around and flipped upside down, back and forth, and then they take it off and go find your way home, and that's what it's like sometimes to be an entrepreneur, so it's like you can't, it's the excitement of getting lost, not knowing what that path is going to bring you, but it's keeping in your mind that true north, that this is where I'm going, this is what I need to do, and after a while of that conditioning, you'll just do it,
Right.
I see military operators do it all the time, high level ones, and they are so conditioned that they just know at the end of the day, well, what's the mission? What's the purpose? Okay, I'm on it. That's what we will do.
Right.
I don't know how we're going to do it sometimes. I don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
This just changed. This just happened. Okay, good. Good. That's the attitude, right? It can't be, oh my God, what are we going to do? It's okay, good. We're in the thick of this horrible situation. We're going to keep smiling and go. We got to do this.
That's it. That's it, man.
What's my true north? I got to get back to my kids, man. I got to do second grade English. Like we have to just keep going, right?
That's it.
Now, when you got into the business initially, there was this transition, right? You were doing sports. What was it that initially brought you in? Was it just gainful employment? Like, why did you get to the real estate business?
I felt when I was coaching at the time, and my entire life or professional life, I guess you would say, had been sports, and I just felt, which I loved sports. I still love sports, but I just felt like there was more to the world that I wanted to explore. I felt like I was so pigeonholed, I guess, that I never saw or experienced. Uh, there was so much more to experience. So, but I knew I wanted to do something that I enjoyed doing, and I wanted the freedom, um, and I knew I liked working with people, and I wanted to make money. Um, so, entrepreneurship and real estate just appealed to me. Um, for those things because the thing with sports was that I really enjoyed it, but there was limiting factors as well, like where you live, and it's a business as well, right? The the idea of building your own, I always wanted to build something,
Yeah.
um, and I just felt like I don't know why, particularly real estate, but I just felt like there was more to the world, and I felt like real estate was a good way to do it. And that was it. It's like at the time when I got into real estate, I don't know if I told you, but like, so I was a graduate assistant football coach basically at Wake Forest,
Yep.
where you go to school and you coach football basically, and but they don't really care or want you to go to school. That's just kind of to get you in the door.
Right.
I went to business school. I was an English undergrad, but I was like, I need to learn like business skills. Or originally I wanted to go to law school because they were going to pay for it, right? But you can't, the first year of law school, you can't work. And I was working. So I was like, okay, let me do business school. And I was doing it. I was doing that. It was like you go to class pretty much at night. And then I was coaching like all day, every day. And it was good. I was okay. I was learning, but nothing that people were really doing. This was in North Carolina, so a lot of people working for Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Lowe's, and all types of stuff. It wasn't really that appealing to me. But then one day, the father of one of the students, he was a commercial real estate investor, developer, like broker, and he just came and talked to the class. And he was just one of these guys with a big personality, like had a cigar in his mouth, and he's telling all the stories, and he was totally different from, you know, everybody else that had spoken to us and talked to us, just not the corporate type of thing at all. And I liked the idea because he was like, yeah. And and also kind of investment banking was the same thing, similar. Like I can do one or two deals in a year and be fine, And he was like, yeah, all this crap that they're teaching you about efficient markets and stuff, that's BS. Like if that was true, then I wouldn't be here right now and all this. And I was just like, okay, this dude, there's something about this guy that I'm drawn to.
Right.
So I just went up to him after, and I'm young at this point, and I just went up to him like, look, I don't know much about what you do or anything, but I know it appeals to me, and it's something that I'm interested in. Like, would you take the time and like let me know who I can talk to or what I can do? And he just kind of looked at me kind of weird and was like, all right, if you're serious, then I will. And he kind of started introducing me to people, and I started talking to. I was just always like, when I found something that I thought I liked, I'm just gonna go for it. So I just started talking to as many people, and I was like, all right, let me find out about this real estate thing. Like, what makes you good at it? What do you like? What don't you like? I just started interviewing a bunch of people.
Yep.
And the more and more that I talked to people, it was just a combination of like the information I was getting and like stuff that I liked. Seemed like I always wanted to be an investor. That was in my mind.
Yep.
But it seemed like, okay, I was listening to what people were saying, like, oh, you can learn a lot by being a broker, And then they were like, at this time, they were like, oh yeah, don't even worry about residential brokerage. Don't even do that. That's a waste of time. Like, get into commercial brokerage.
Yeah.
Yeah, get into commercial brokerage. So I started just talking to as many commercial brokerages as I could, and um, I don't, maybe I talked to JLL at that time, but CB Richard Ellis and all those people. And, you know, I was about to graduate from business school and all this. So I was just like, oh man, I'm just going to get a job at one of these big commercial firms, and, you know, I'll make good money right out of school. And like,
where's my cigar?
like, yeah, I'm just on my way. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know, I was like, you know, and everything was going pretty well towards that. And then like, it was 2008, and yeah, everything just dropped. The economy just tanked.
We all got the backhanded slap to the ground.
Yeah. And so I didn't know, I wasn't a business person. I didn't know what was going on in the economy. All I knew was that in the culture that I grew up in, if you do what you're supposed to do, go to school, graduate, you know, accomplish these certain goals, then everything is supposed to be okay.
Sheet cake smothered in victory.
Yeah, like everything is okay. So, I mean, I remember I interviewed with CB Richard Ellis, and that's who I wanted. It was in Charlotte, and they had a team there. I think they still have this team that does most of the agency leasing, the office leasing, and it's like an all women team, and they really liked me, you know,
Which is very unique, right? I mean, that's
which
pretty
is super unique. Obviously, me being Black, I think they really liked me.
Yep.
And they were like, we want to hire you, but we just had a hiring freeze throughout the whole company. We can't hire you, let alone pay you anything. Like, it's not going to happen. And it just didn't work out the way that I wanted it, or I expected it to. And maybe that was my first introduction to the real estate world. But that's why I got into it, you know. That's why I got into it originally. And then just from there, I just had to figure out, okay, is this something that I really want to do, and stick with it, figure it out, and like just keep growing and growing from there. So that's kind of how I got started. Yeah.
And then you got in, and then you just started to just explore. I mean, that's what we all do, right? We're just kind of like tinkering around. Have you ever felt that the real estate business, once you got in, have you ever felt that your race, who you are, has been a determining factor in your ability to be able to get success? And you can be painfully honest, which is fine, you know, because what have you experienced? Do you find that there's enough diversity in this business, or is it still void of diversity? I mean, you know, that's.
Oh man, you're asking.
I gotta know.
You're asking hard questions, man.